We often think that change requires a multitude, that to make a difference you need a loud voice, a position of power, or the total approval of the crowds. But history, and the stories we hold most dear, often tell a different truth. Sometimes the most profound impact begins with just one person who refuses to compromise their heart, even when the rest of the world has walked away. Today, we are traveling back to a time before time, to a world that had lost its pulse, a world that had everything but lacked the one thing that mattered, a soul. This is the story of a carpenter, a mission that defied every law of logic, and a faithfulness that saved the future of every living thing. This is the story of Noah. In the beginning, the Almighty breathed life into a world of wonder. Imagine a world where the air was perfectly crisp, so cold and clean it felt like drinking from a mountain spring. Imagine jagged peaks that looked like crowns of glory, and rivers that ran with water so clear it looked like liquid diamond. He shaped the mountains with his hands, stretched the infinite skies with his breath, and filled the rushing rivers with purpose. Into all of this beauty, the scent of pine, the warmth of the sun, the song of the wind, he placed mankind. He gave them minds to think, hearts to feel, and one simple instruction: live well, love one another, and never forget who made you. But mankind forgot. It did not happen overnight. It was a slow, creeping decay, like a rust that starts in a dark corner and eventually consumes the whole machine. They replaced wonder with cold, hard calculation. They replaced love with the relentless pursuit of power. They built great, echoing halls of stone, filling them with the noise of their own vanity, celebrating their own names, and bowing to no one but the reflection in the mirror. The cities became cages of gold. In the streets, people stepped over the hungry to get to the jewelry shops. Violence became a language. Deceit became a currency. They didn't just forget God, they mocked the very idea of him. They forgot with passion. They forgot loudly, proudly, and completely. The earth itself began to groan under the weight of their indifference, the very soil feeling the stain of the blood spilled upon it in the name of progress. Generations bled into one another. The Creator's instructions were discarded like husks in the wind. The people of the earth became obsessed with the tangible, gold, stone, and the dominion over the weak. In the great cities, the smoke from their fires choked the stars. The weak cried out under the yoke of the powerful, but the halls of the city were too loud with music, feasting, and hollow laughter to hear them. It was a world of billions, yet it was a world utterly alone. Yet, in the middle of this suffocating darkness, one name remained anchored in the light: Noah. Noah was not a man of high station. He was not a prince or a philosopher. He was a carpenter, a man whose hands were a map of deep calluses, scars, and the dust of 1,000 trees. He knew the grain of the wood, the strength of the timber, and the value of a day's work. Every morning, long before the sun dared to crest the horizon, while the rest of the world was still asleep in their beds of silk, Noah would rise. He would sit in the quiet, damp grass, his rough palms pressed together, and he would pray. He prayed not because he was told to, but because it was the only way he could breathe in a world that felt like it was drowning in its own ego. His neighbors whispered behind his back. They watched him from their balconies, calling him a dreamer, a man who wasted his time on invisible things. His own brothers laughed at him, mocking his simple life. But Noah was steady. He was like the cedar trees he worked with, deeply rooted, flexible in the wind, but impossible to break. One evening, the air changed. Noah was sitting alone on a ridge, watching the constellations wheel overhead. The wind, which usually carried the distant sounds of the city's revelry, suddenly went dead silent. It was a stillness that seemed to swallow all sound. The crickets stopped their chirping, the leaves stopped their rustling. The world held its breath. And then, a voice. It wasn't a sound that hit the ears. It was a resonance that vibrated from the very marrow of his bones.
Noah. Here I am, my lord. I am listening. I have seen your heart, Noah, in a world full of people who have turned away. You have remained. You have been faithful when it was hard. You have been just when it was unpopular. You honor me, my lord. I am nothing but dust and breath. Listen, Noah, knowing. The earth has rotted from the inside out. Mankind has chosen its own ruin. The rains will come, Noah. The great deep will break open. The waters will rise until they cover the highest peaks, washing away the pride of every city, every tower, and every throne. My lord, is there no mercy? For generations I offered them a path back. They chose the abyss. Now, the earth must be cleansed so it can begin again. You will build a vessel. You will seal it with pitch, and it will carry you, your family, and the seeds of all life through the storm.
The next morning, the sun rose on a world that had no idea its time was running out. Noah did not waste a second. He walked into the forest and struck the first tree. The task was a war of the spirit. Noah spent years just preparing the timber. Imagine the sound of the saw. Scrape, 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 hour after hour, decade after decade. He had to learn the secrets of gopher wood, how to cut it so it wouldn't warp, how to treat it so it would withstand the salt of a world-ending tide. He worked through the scorching heat that blistered his skin. He worked through the biting, lonely cold of the nights, his only company the moon and the steady rhythm of his saw. Every night Noah would return home, his body trembling with exhaustion. His wife would wash the grime and blood from his hands. One night she looked at him, her eyes shining with tears. "Noah," she whispered, "the people say you have lost your mind. Our sons are mocked in the streets. Do you ever doubt? When you look at that clear blue sky, do you ever wonder if you are building a monument to a dream that will never come?" Noah took her hands. "Every day I look at the sky, and every day I remember the voice. I do not build because I see clouds. I build because I heard the truth. Our inheritance is not in this land, but in the life that will survive the storm." The project was gargantuan. This wasn't just a boat, it was a floating city. 3 decks, the lower for the heavy beasts, the middle for the smaller creatures, and the upper for his family. He spent thousands of hours boiling pitch. The thick, black resin filled his lungs with a bitter, choking smoke. He smeared it over every inch of the wood until the ship looked like a great black mountain rising from the valley floor. As the skeletal hull began to rise, the people gathered. The village elders would stand at the edge of his field, arms crossed, smirking. "Noah," he yelled, "what madness is this? You are miles from any shore. The ground is parched. You are wasting your life on a ghost ship for a sea that doesn't exist." Noah stopped his hammering. He looked at the elder with a sadness that was deeper than any ocean. "It is not madness, elder. It is obedience. The sky will not stay blue forever. The flood is coming. Please, I beg you, lay down your pride. Seek the Creator while there is still time. There is room on this ship for those who believe." The crowd erupted in laughter, a sharp, stinging sound. They threw stones. They made up mocking songs. But Noah simply wiped the dust from his face and kept hammering. He was building his life's work, and the world was watching, utterly blind to the horizon. Then came the day the laughter died. The work was finished. The ark stood like a mountain of black wood, smelling of pitch and cedar. The air grew thick and heavy, like a wet blanket. The birds stopped singing. The wind died down to a breathless, terrifying hush. Noah walked out of his home and stopped. The horizon was moving. It started as a low rumble. From the deep forests, from the high mountains, they came. Creatures of every kind. The mighty lion and the timid hare. The soaring eagle and the heavy elephant. They moved in perfect, silent unison, 2 by 2. They didn't fight. They didn't hunt. They simply marched toward the open door of the ark, a river of life flowing into the darkness of the hall. The village went deathly quiet. "How is he doing this?" the elder whispered, his face pale as ash. Noah stood on the ramp, his voice cracking with emotion. "He is not controlling them. He is saving them. This is your final sign. Look at the animals. Even the beasts have more wisdom than the princes of this world. The door is still open. Come inside." The elder looked at the animals, then at the massive boat, and then back at his stone houses and his gold. He couldn't admit he had been wrong for 100 years. "We are not getting into that box," he said, turning his back one last time. The sky turned a bruised, sickly purple. The first drop of rain hit. It was cold, heavy, and felt like lead. And then the door. The massive, reinforced door of the ark groaned as it began to move. It wasn't Noah pulling the ropes. It was an unseen force, a divine hand sealing the sanctuary. As the latch clicked shut with a sound that echoed like thunder, the sky tore itself apart. This wasn't just rain. It was the fountains of the great deep bursting forth. The ground cracked open, releasing torrents of water. The roar was like nothing ever heard, a physical pressure that shook the earth. Inside, the animals were silent. Noah and his family clung to one another as the ark began to groan, the wood creaking under the impossible weight. Suddenly, with a sickening lurch, the ark lifted. For the first time, it was afloat. Outside, the world was being erased. The cities were swallowed in hours. The towers crumbled like sandcastles. The laughter was replaced by a terror so pure it could not be described. They beat their fists against the black wood of the ark until their fingers bled, screaming for the door to open. But the door remained shut. For 40 days and 40 nights, the ark was the only world that existed. It was a dark, pitching, rolling sanctuary in a universe of gray water. It wasn't easy inside. The smell of the animals, the constant rocking, the sound of the rain hammering on the roof like a million mirams. It was a test of endurance. Noah sat in the dim light of an oil lamp, listening to the roar of the destruction outside, his heart breaking for a world that wouldn't listen. He spent those days tending to the life inside. He walked the decks in the dark, checking the food stores, comforting his frightened grandchildren. He realized that survival was its own kind of labor. They had to maintain the ship, keep the peace, and keep their spirits from breaking in the darkness. Every day was a cycle of feeding, cleaning, and waiting. All they had was the rhythm of the waves and the steady, unshakable belief that there was a shore on the other side of the gray. Then, one morning, the hammering stopped. The rain was gone. The silence that followed was even more deafening than the storm. The ark drifted for months on a world of endless water. No landmarks, no stars, only the wind. Noah released a raven, but it found no place to rest. Then he released a dove. The first time it came back, but the second time, as the sun began to set, the dove returned with a fresh
olive leaf in its beak. Noah held that small green leaf. A piece of the world returned, and he wept. When the ark finally groaned to a halt on the peaks of Ararat, the door opened. Noah stepped out into a world that felt brand new. The air tasted of wet earth and newborn life. The world had been washed clean. The Creator greeted him with a promise. High above the damp earth, a bridge of colors stretched across the sky. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. A rainbow.
This is my promise, Noah. Never again will the waters rise to destroy all life. Seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease.
Noah's story is not the story of a hero who sought glory. It is the story of a man who held on to a whisper when the entire world was screaming. He was not the strongest man, but he was faithful when it was called foolish. He built a future when everyone else was obsessed with the present. Thank you for walking through this journey with me today. It's easy to look at the world around us and feel small. We live in a noisy world, full of people telling us what to believe and how to live. It is often easier to follow the crowd than to stand alone in the forest with a hammer and a dream. But Noah's story is a powerful reminder that true impact isn't measured by the noise we make, but by the steadiness of our conviction. You don't need a crowd to be right. You only need the truth. You only need the courage to keep building, even when the sun is shining and the world is laughing. If this story stirred your soul, if it reminded you that your faithfulness matters, please share it. Subscribe to join us for more journeys into the heart of history and faith. Remember, the greatest stories are not the ones we read, but the ones we live with every step of our own journey. Until next time, keep building, keep believing, and keep looking for the light.